All right, so I'm is that working? Yeah, hello, okay. I'm going to talk about two separate learning algorithms which are both used within the overall OpenCog framework. The first talk is about procedure learning procedures for how to do things. The second talk is about perceptual learning. And the procedure learning talk, the paper is about some recent improvements to the MOSES automated program learning system. In fact, the bulk of the talk, I'll have to explain what MOSES is and how it works, and describing the new improvements won't take too long. So MOSES is an evolutionary program learning approach, somewhat related to, but obviously not identical to, genetic programming. At the most simple level, it takes in a fitness function and outputs a program in a simple language called Combo, which it's the creator of the Combo language, Moshe Lux, has recently described it as Lisp with a bad haircut. So it's a simple Lisp-like language with less syntactic sugar. This is part of the overall OpenCog architecture, which has broad AGI goals and has been used for a variety of both practical applications and prototype research projects. If you want to know about OpenCog, look at opencog.org and follow the links. I don't have time to explain the whole OpenCog cognitive architecture and the vision and philosophy of mind underlying it. In this talk, the OpenCog wiki site has a lot on it. And my book on OpenCog, actually, I'm not sure what title I'm going to use. On this slide, it uses a previous tentative title, Building Better Minds. But the book is actually done, and it has been sent to a publisher, and is on the route to being published after many years of hacking at it. So I'm pleased with that. OpenCog uses a weighted labeled hypergraph knowledge representation called the atom space, with different kinds of nodes and links and different weights. And acting on that atom space are different cognitive processes which deal with learning different kinds of knowledge, declarative, sensory, motor, procedural, and so forth. For example, a logic engine called PLN handles declarative knowledge. Now, what I'm going to talk about now is aspects of how OpenCog handles procedural knowledge via the MOSES automated program learning system. MOSES can also be run as a standalone executable outside of the overall OpenCog framework, but the initial motivation and the much of the ongoing motivation for working with the system is its role in combination with other methods within OpenCog. Projector isn't quite right. We're actually missing the left of each slide. I don't know if we can do anything with it.
That's not the projector. That's the
thinking.
That's a resolution.
I don't think so, because on the screen I see the whole thing.
Yeah, but look, I can't move it. It doesn't matter.
Oh, that's odd.
You have to change the resolution on your laptop if you want to fix it.
Well,
but I think it's okay.
It's probably all right. I think that most slides don't have that problem. So yeah. So how does MOSES differ from genetic programming? And basically, if you know John Koza-style genetic programming, I can explain MOSES by analogy to that. If you don't know how GP works at all, within the scope of a 15-minute talk, I don't have time to explain MOSES. So hopefully most of you know a little bit about GP. It tries to evolve a population of programs to fulfill some specification by a rough emulation of evolution by natural selection with iterated crossover mutation and selection. So in MOSES, first of all, we have a meta population. What we call them demes, a term drawn from biology. They've been called islands in the genetic algorithm literature, but they're separate evolving subpopulations. And within each deme, we do crossover and mutation, like in GP, but we also do some probabilistic modeling. Initially, it was modeled on Martin Pelikan's H-BOA work, and we now do various other sorts of probabilistic modeling. So in essence, instead of just crossing over and mutating the better individuals in the population, you take the individuals in the population that were better, build a probabilistic model of what made them good, then generate new programs by instance generation from that distribution. Next, we take programs in the population and we normalize them into a hierarchical normal form, which is called ENF, elegant normal form. We took that name from someone else. We didn't make it up ourselves. Craig Holman had defined the ENF for Boolean functions, and we then extended it to more general programs. And that's important so that probabilistic modeling and crossover will work. If you don't normalize the programs, the probabilistic modeling doesn't work, and crossover just does kind of random search. So these things are covered in Moshe Luke's 2007 PhD thesis, which from Washington University, which was called Competent Program Evolution. And we take some care into how you mutate a program, so that you're varying a program in ways that are likely to make some semantic sense. Now, finally, something we've done recently, which is what's described in the paper that this talk is based on, we've gotten rid of a preliminary stage of feature selection. So in the past with Moses, like with many machine learning algorithms, if you had a huge number of features, you would do some statistics or run decision trees or do something simple to filter down to a smaller set of input features that would then be fed to the Moses programs. But now we do that feature selection integrated with Moses learning, which seems to work better. So the overall picture of Moses, as I've just described it, you can see here, the upper corner is a metapopulation of demes or islands, separate evolution in each of those. Inside each deme, you have an exemplar, a program that seeds the deme. Then various variations on that exemplar are explored by a crossover mutation or probabilistic optimization. Then you select new candidates for the demes. Before a new program learned within this deme is selected to seed a new deme, it is reduced by the program normalization rules. Then it goes and makes a new deme. So you have evolution of new demes. A deme which has nothing good in it eventually gets killed and is replaced by a new deme which is seeded by something from the population in a successful deme. So you have the evolution going on two levels, which seems to be important. Here's a fairly trivial example. You could have a program which is a Boolean function, and you view the process of adapting it as twiddling knobs. So this, no one can read that because the screen is small, but it takes that little tiny program and shows all the different variations on it that would be explored in the neighborhood of radius 1 from the program. And by varying that simple program within the distance 1 or 2 from that simple program, you would get other simple Boolean programs that could then be evaluated. This illustrates the reduction to the elegant normal form. If you started with that program, we apply some reduction rules, you would get it in this kind of simple, like a layer of ors and a layer of ands and a layer of ors, somewhat like a standard and/or tree. And you have similar normal forms for arithmetic functions or for functions with while loops, ifs, and various control structures. And what you find is when you normalize a program like that, then the distance between two programs measured syntactically in terms of the tree representation of the program, and the distance between two programs measured semantically in terms of what the programs do tend to correlate with each other. So normalizing the programs makes structure and behavior correlate among programs that are pretty close to each other and lie within a single deme. And that's an important observation here. So that has to do with what is the specific geometry of program space. And I don't have much time. I'll skip over the probabilistic modeling within a deme, which I've discussed before. So we've used this before to do stuff in a virtual world, say to make virtual dogs learn to play fetch by reinforcement and by imitation. So you reward it if it plays fetch properly, punish if it doesn't, and Moses can learn little programs combining basic actions and control mechanisms. It can learn things, fetch an object, kick a few times, do a dance till you tell it to stop. And in addition to these virtual world type applications, we've done a bunch of machine learning applications as well. In genetics, in data mining of information from video games, from market research, text classification. as has been done with genetic programming. Typically, we've done an advanced step of feature selection, like most machine learning people will do. The new thing that we've added recently, which actually has made a quite large impact, is let the different deems use different subsets of the overall feature space. So if you have 20,000 features, that's okay, but each deem may have 50 features. And then initially they may have random subsets of features or features chosen by interaction information or some other mathematical heuristic. Then when a deem spawns a new deem, the child deem keeps some of the features of the parent deem and gets some new features by various heuristics. For example, you may choose new features that have high mutual information with the useful features for this deem over a relevant part of the cases that you're evaluating the program on. So you have heuristics for choosing the feature subset of the child deem based on the feature subset of the parent deem. So the deem level optimization is searching feature subset space at the same time as the optimization within a deem is searching program space. So we actually use this to predict which US soldiers will kill themselves, which was kind of interesting, based on information from their social network data and psychologist reports. So this was text classification on the output of a natural language parsing system. I mean, supervised learning application, but the feature selection being inside MOSES actually made it work much better in this case than we tried support vector machines and decision trees and neural nets and various available tools. And I mean, we didn't tune each of those to death, so you can't really say that proved this is better, but it did work well, and it clearly worked better than MOSES without feature selection inside learning. We've also done this a bunch for genetics problems, analyzing gene expression data and various other problems. So overall, I think the philosophy there of putting feature selection inside learning, it's much like deep learning in neural networks or something, where in a deep learning architecture, generally the lowest layer is in essence doing some kind of feature selection or feature consolidation. So here you're doing something sort of philosophically similar. You're searching feature subset space on one layer, and you're searching program space within each deem, which has its own feature subset. And that uses a lot of machines and a lot of processing power, but it's 2013 and we have a lot of machines and a lot of processing power, which is great. And we're exploring some other things too since I wrote the paper. You can do multi-objective optimization, and basically if you have many different objective functions and you don't know how to weight them, each deem can have a different weighting of the objective functions. And you can also use heuristics to choose the weight vector among the objective functions of the child deem based on what you saw in the parent deem. That uses even more processors. And the talk I'll give next year is probably on something I don't have time to explain now, but we're actually overhauling this search within a deem to no longer use HBOA, but we're using some stuff from information geometry, which is quite cool. So you kind of compute the geodesic, the shortest path through the space of probability distributions over programs, and use that to accelerate the program search. So one lesson here is if you're willing to use an awful lot of machines, each of which has a bunch of processors, you can actually do very cool things with automated program learning, and you don't need to do simplistic things like, say, I'm only going to choose 20 actions my virtual agent can take, or I'm only going to choose 500 words the machine learning algorithm you can look at. You can actually feed it all in and let the AI sort it out, which is certainly what you need to do for AGI. I mean, the application with trying to predict and help prevent suicide among soldiers, or trying to analyze genetics data from Alzheimer's patients, which is what I described in the paper for the proceedings. I mean, these applications are not AGI, they're narrow AI machine learning applications. However, the concept that you should not pre-select what features, but just be able to feed a lot of possible features into a procedure learning algorithm, this is critical for AGI. And if you look back to these things where we were trying to use MOSES to have a virtual dog learn tricks, I mean, when we did that, we chose a few dozen actions that the virtual dog could take. But with the new system, you could feed an indefinite number of actions. It might use more processing power, but it would find the right combination eventually. All right. That's procedure learning.
You want the question jointly at the end or different, separately?
If someone has a question that's specific about that, they might as well ask it now while it's fresh in their mind, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay, but from what you said is that the program structure is limited to a tree-like structure. It's like the original assumption of John Cosa, that is there any space for the program structure to differ, like to enable things like loops or conditional jumps?
We have loops and conditionals, but then you would have an if at a node or a while at a node in the tree. You can have recursion as well, just put a combinator at a node in the tree.
But how is it in a tree structure you cannot place a loop? Like
Yes, you can. You can put a while at a node in the tree, and one of the children is the index of how many times you go around the loop, and the other child is the body of the loop.
Okay, but there
Anything
must
that
be-
has an abstract syntax tree, it can be a tree.
But there must be a connection, yes, from this.
No, look.
Let's filter that out maybe at the end.
Okay,
It's a technical talk.
Well, however, it's not true. We can represent, it's Turing complete. You can represent anything in a tree in that way.
I guess two things. First of all, so what you're doing is known as random subspace projections in the machine learning literature. And Tin Cam Ho at Bell Labs, 20 years ago, developed a system based on that. Of course, Leo Breiman's random forests works better than that. It does its random sub-projections at each intermediate node in
Yeah,
the
I mean,
tree.
we've used random forests quite a lot. I'm familiar with that. Right?
So, but the real question here is, with gene data, you always overfit. So are you using an ensemble to make your predictions to get rid of the overfitting?
Yeah, we are.
Okay.
We get a model
So
ensemble.
the answer is really not feature selection, but diversity.
Well, we're doing that already. I mean, we have, actually, if you look into it, our fitness function has, typically, you have the basic score, which is
Right.
how well it does. Then we have a diversity penalty.
Right.
Then we have an Occam penalty.
Right.
And weighting those three things is actually quite domain specific.
Yes.
Like you do it one way for gene expression data, you do it another way for actions in a video game, you have to tune that another way for actions in a game world, which is
Yeah.
unfortunate, but that is the case at the moment.
Well, and I also recommend, if you haven't seen it, this paper called On the Necessity of Irrelevant Features, where they show that in a problem like the gene problem, the majority of the features that your algorithm will choose will be, in fact, wrong, but you
Sure.
have enough of them that you still get better performance than not doing feature selection. But, so there's a risk of interpreting the features that were chosen by the algorithm as actually being biologically important, when in
Well,
fact the majority of them may be.
This is a whole other story, because I've been working for 10 years with
Right.
biologists at NIH and
Right.
CDC, and I think if you take the ensemble of models that you learn, and you look at the features that occur most often through the ensemble, we've had many, many cases where biologists have done wet lab work validating the relevance of those features. To
But not all of them will
phenotype.
be relevant.
No,
No,
of
so
course
it
not.
enriches the set of relevant features.
Because if
it's
you-
not filtered.
If you're dealing with 1,000 people and 25,000 genes, there's a statistical problem there, right? So,
Maybe last one.
Just a quick question about the GP analog of what Tom is talking about in general relevance. Have you looked at code bloat and this work on introns?
Moses doesn't really have code bloat. So Moses learns very nice, compact little programs.
So how do you know that that's actually good for diversity?
Well, it is good for accuracy out of sample. Our out of sample accuracy is usually about the same as our in sample accuracy, so we don't overfit. And that seems good. I mean,
Okay, I think we have to go
okay.
to the next talk.